I'm Jim Collison, live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on April 24th, 2018. On this BP10 edition of Call to Coach, it is a resource for Gallup-trained BP10 coaches and educators who want to help others identify and develop their entrepreneurial talents. We have Gallup experts and independent BP10 coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help others maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this live webcast, we do have a chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window. Just look down there. Chat wing is down there for you. Hit the login button, bottom left-hand corner. Choose the guest account. Don't create one. Just choose the guest account. Put your name in where it says guest. And we will be taking your questions during this program. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching or even BP10 solutions, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or use a contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit our brand new BP10 site as well. Again, the address to that, gallup.com//builder. We'll get you there again, gallup.com/builder. You can also catch the video, both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening to this podcast. We call that podcasting. It's available for you off our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget to rate and review and subscribe to this podcast if you're listening in Apple Podcasts. Subscribe and hit the notification bell on YouTube there so you get notified whenever we go live. And, of course, follow us on Spreaker so you never miss another program. Todd Johnson is our host today. Todd's Gallup's channel leader for entrepreneurship and job creation. Todd, welcome back to part 2 of a 4-part series here on Born to Build.
Awesome. Thank you. Super excited about this one. I as everybody knows, I'm excited about the movement underway. We actually launched, initially as Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder back in 2014. And we've sure learned a lot in the market, and we're excited about bringing all those enhancements. As you know, we're trying to change the national dialogue to what are you building? What are you trying to build? What have you built? And of course, we all know that knowing your talents to build is foundational to the process of building. So we're continuing on the revolution. I have a great privilege of introducing our guest, our leader, our scientific research lead at Gallup, Dr. Sangeeta Badal. She's also my best friend at work, so it makes it really easy to work around the clock with her on this very exciting movement. Today, we're going to focus on opportunity identification. So the first series was kind of on who you are and who you need around you. Today, we're going to go deep on on identifying opportunities. And I won't go on and on, but I will color commentate if that's okay, Dr. Badal. But can you teach us the keys, the second key, which is opportunity identification, of course, in the new book, Born to Build. So these activities are discussed in length in the book and are available in writable PDFs on the dashboard of your BP10 account. So Dr. Badal, welcome. Thanks for bringing your research and your insights and your intellect to the call. It takes Jim and I up many notches.
Well, thank you, Todd. You can see why he's my best friend, right? Well, it's a pleasure again to be in front of this group that, as Todd had said, is very close to our hearts, and we really, really value each one of you who is taking the message of entrepreneurship out and helping people be more productive and economically making their future. All right. So our second key in the book, Born to Build, is about recognizing opportunities. And this probably is the most important decision that someone who is thinking of starting a business or thinking of creating something new, a product or a service, probably will make. It is about figuring out what is it that is needed in the market, what are the customers looking for, and sometimes it is about creating new demand. So customers might not be looking for something, but the entrepreneur can see into the future and say, this is probably something that could be helpful in certain context. It could be something that could drive and make somebody's life easier, or whatever the case may be. So we will talk about what is that process that helps someone recognize opportunities. Now, of course, we all understand how important it is to recognize opportunities when someone is in the process of starting something. You've got to land on an idea that then the person can develop. But recognition of opportunities can also be for people who are, say, have existing businesses. So many of you are advisors and on the boards of existing businesses. Um, and for those people, it is also important that they continue to look at opportunities in their environment to continue to offer new products and services to the customers, and grow, scale their business and grow. And then also, there could be people who are employed for an employer, and might be looking to start new divisions, come up with new products and services. So irrespective of whether it is a pure startup environment or it is an existing large organization that the person is involved in, or it is someone who is running an existing business, recognition of opportunities is a task or a process that is ongoing and continuing.
Can I just reiterate the importance of that? It's such an important point because we don't want to get pigeonholed into just this pure startup, got to be new, high tech coast entrepreneur thing that has gotten some people confused. I mean, Joseph Schumpeter started talking about creative destruction back in the 30s, right? The Australian economist, and there have been different words associated to this opportunity identification, but I just want to reiterate its importance on, we're a 100-year-old polling company and we're continuing to look at new opportunities, new product, service, geography. So we want to just be able to cast as wide a net on the economic energy that needs to occur within the existing businesses. So every one of our coaches is coaching someone who should be intentionally, structurally, continually looking at new opportunities. Again, small, large, it's industry agnostic, and it's just all inclusive. So I just wanted to reemphasize the importance of this activity. This is not just for the startup community.
That's such a good point. Well, so opportunities are everywhere, of course. It is about how do we really begin to recognize them? How do we become more open to recognizing those opportunities, which is what this exercise that we will be walking you through today is all about. So if I study the literature on entrepreneurial cognition and psychology, um, it is pretty clear that individuals' likelihood of recognizing opportunity increases with number one, and this isn't going to be a surprise, prior knowledge in the area that the person is working in. It could be knowledge of the environment. It could be knowledge of a particular and particular expertise that someone has in a certain area. Number two, it is the motivation to change the status quo. So someone who wants to make a change in what is going on around him or her is the second characteristic or quality that would lead someone to recognize opportunities. Now, uh, the changes could be due to improvements in certain process that a person is involved in and working in. It could be new developments in regulation. It could be changes in the policy. It could be changes in the industry. Any unexpected events or demographic shifts, any of these things in the environment could lead to a person to get motivated to do something that would change the status quo. And the third thing is, how big a network do you have and how do you leverage that network? So these three things of prior knowledge of the environment, the motivation to change the status quo, and the extent of networks that the individual has and is ready to leverage. These are the three conditions under which not just an entrepreneur, but any individual can start to recognize opportunities. Now, the first thing is you need to be open, as we were discussing before. You have to be open to recognizing opportunities, and the first exercise that we will be looking at today, which is the opportunity journal tool, is all about that openness of how do you open yourself to actually be more aware of your environment and then start to look at those gaps, or to look at what is, which is the current situation, to what should be, which is the person thinking that this is how I can fill this need or this gap, which is all what opportunity recognition is about. So let's look at the first tool. If Jim, you could
Yeah, it's up there.
There it
put
is.
that on the screen, and there it is. This is the opportunity journal tool, and what it does is it helps the person to walk the path of opportunity recognition. So let's start with your talents first of all. And what talent does is it accelerates the person's engagement with the task. So if you have ever experienced a state where you forget what time it is and how many hours you spent on doing something, and you are totally engaged, which is called the state of flow, as the psychologist, very famous psychologist Csikszentmihalyi talks about the state of flow. That is what is driven by the use of talent. Talent leads to high engagement, which is the first column in this tool that is up on your screen. So what we are trying to do is understand the way to that opportunity recognition, the path to opportunity recognition. Start with your talents. Look at things that accelerate your learning curve. So if you work in the field of your talents, that also leads to you learning those things much faster than your peers. And the last is you do see superior performance. So what we will do is we'll use these three principles that are about how talent impacts our ability to be engaged in a task, our ability to learn, and our ability to give superior performance in understanding here are the areas where I think I would be best suited to find things to work on, which are those opportunities that you then can exploit. So, what you see here is a chart that is done, of course, by a college student who is trying to understand what is it that she really enjoys, what is it that she learns really fast, and what is it that where her performance is superior. So, you see an activity or a task list on the left hand column of this chart, and then she rates her engagement with the task, how quickly she learns, and what is her performance like on a scale of 1 to 5. This activity should be done every single day, minimum for about 4 days. So say you have someone who is an existing entrepreneur. I think his or her activity task list would be very different than a college activity task list, but they can still do this exercise in terms of pinpointing those opportunities that might not be immediately obvious to the person. Same for the employees, people like Jim, Todd, or myself who work in corporate environments can have an activity list to understand here is what we are working on. These are the things that engage us. Here is how fast or quickly I learned it, and here is what my performance is like. And then, notes about how the person felt. Now, what this does is it immediately brings to mind or brings to the fore the areas or activities that are the most fruitful as well as interesting to the individual. So you can see here that this is a storyboard, opportunity tool for a college student whose name is Sam, and she is in organic chemistry. She goes to a physiology lab. She's a pre-med student. She went to the entrepreneurship club and really enjoyed it. She really likes her English literature class. She likes being on stage. Band is one of her first or of her favorite activities. So she gives it a 5 in terms of not only performance, but also in terms of how quickly she learned the instrument that she was playing, as well as her engagement with the task. And one interesting thing is she really likes cooking and trying new dishes. Um, then she also looks at her performance drainers, and these are where the rating is low for the individual. So, organic chemistry happens to be one such thing, as well as the lab. Now, she enjoys chemistry. She likes to understand and apply the principles of chemistry, but more in her cooking rather than in solving equations in her classroom. She also enjoys interacting with physiology students, but what she doesn't like about that task is the cleanup of the lab equipment and the setting up of the lab equipment. Those are tasks that are really boring for her. So by going through this exercise for about a few weeks, she begins to become mindful. So that's the key word. I think you're basically priming your brain to recognize, what is it that I enjoy doing? What is it that is really driven through my talent lens? And then let me figure out what opportunities I have. So here's what happens. She accidentally discovers an opportunity where she realized that making dinner for her friends really put her in that state of flow that we talked about. She was in the zone when she was doing that. And she planned each menu carefully, and she invited her friends. She would experiment with her dishes and different culinary traditions. And she applied principles of what she had learned in the chemistry course to her cooking. So she was basically at her creative best when she was involved in that activity. And that led to some of her friends saying, I wish that some of our dining halls here on campus could offer the dishes that you cook up for us. That led to that idea. And you will see in the book, so this is all described in the book, you will see Sam's story and how it develops and what she does with that idea. But there was that spark of an opportunity that was visible to her because of that whole process that she went through in terms of understanding what are these daily activities that point me to a gap, point me to what I like to do, and maybe I want to take it further. And that's what this opportunity journal is all
So
about.
you're just adding an intentionality to Mother Nature. Is that a fair summation? I mean, you're just putting
Absolutely.
structure and intentionality, a little system.
Hmm.
I've often heard behavioral economics is simply nudging Mother Nature.
Right.
Companies are gonna find that you have to put the right people in the right jobs and have an engaged workplace to have an engaged customer, kind of the Gallup path. The jungle, the economic jungle, is going to force those behavioral economic realities. What you're doing here is just trying to maybe speed it up, maybe being more intentional and systematic about it.
Yes.
Sam may have figured out she should be in the restaurant business, long before, but maybe this speeds her up.
Right.
And
Right.
everybody being a little more intentional about seeing an opportunity and fleshing it out of an area of strengths benefits from the process. What a great activity for our coaches. I'm
Right.
sure they're all doing this anyway, but we're trying to add structure to that existing coaching process
I
or
think
teaching
going,
process.
yeah, exactly. I
So,
think that's absolutely right, Todd. And also going through this whole exercise, the structured way of understanding the activities of the day that sometimes we don't even pay attention to most
yeah,
of the time,
right.
that allows you to connect those dots. So basically this is an exercise about connecting those dots, connecting the dots between what is available in your environment, what talents do you bring to the table, what is the demand or need in the environment, and then figuring out how can I fulfill that. And connecting those dots is, I think, an important cognitive exercise that just is sped up. You can speed
Yeah.
that up through sitting down with someone and having someone do that.
And as we
So
talked about in the
that's
first edition, writing it down, things become more real
right.
and affirmed when it's written down.
Right. And the book talks about, for instance, the example of Charles Schwab, who um, came upon the opportunity of offering stocks to individuals, which was a completely different way of offering before the SEC in 1975 changed the rules. So the events that occurred in Charles Schwab's environment were, for instance, a major regulatory change in the way SEC allowed individuals to buy stocks online. The proliferation of the personal computers, they were just coming into into the market for personal use. The development of the software that could track online transactions of goods and services. This is way back all in 70s and 80s, and the ability to make secure financial transactions over internet. So what he could then do is leverage that frustration that individual investors had with very high brokerage fees, and with the change in SEC rules, with what was happening in the environment, he could connect those dots, and there was an opportunity of an online brokerage.
That's a pretty
And
good builder story.
right, and that's, of course, has taken a shape of multi-billion-dollar business today. So it's important to recognize how do I connect those dots in a way that helps someone come up with that idea that then he or she can activate on. So that's about the first tool. If
What
we
do we? Let's see if we have any questions from
Yeah, sure.
our group now, or we can certainly save them to the end as well. Jim, did you have any questions about the opportunity journal? You did an awfully nice job describing it, Dr. Badal.
Amy said out there, let me pull this back up again, and so that you're not seeing, hold on, let me get this back to you. There we go. And let me pull chat back up again. Sorry about that. I wasn't quite ready. Amy said, I know that our clients are looking for value in what they are doing in their businesses. We use a tool very similar to this one. Sometimes we do things in business that do not add value to their job, businesses, or companies. And this was a little bit of a thread that I heard last week among some folks listening that was like, do we always, what about those times where we're trying to solve problems that don't exist? Sometimes these entrepreneurial or even intrapreneurial ventures happen. Is there how do we identify sometimes those? And I think sometimes we can't identify until we've gone through them, to be honest.
I think that's almost a beautiful segue into the storyboard.
I know.
Perfect. It's almost like I read the book.
Right. Right. This question leads us right into the next exercise, because that is going to answer the question that Jim just raised about how do we sort opportunities that are relevant, important, and filling a need versus those that might lead us down some rabbit holes that don't end up anywhere. So here's how you do that. I mean, once you've begun to think like a builder and you have the beginning of an idea that you probably could put into action, I think it is important to see if the idea is practical and worth pursuing. And to do that, what you have to do is you've got to start asking yourself some questions to refine that idea, to develop it to the point where your own understanding of that idea becomes clearer and clearer. So I think the second exercise that we are focusing on, which is called the storyboard tool, is the exercise of understanding whether this idea has any legs at all before someone starts to put resources behind it, before someone starts to invest too much time in it, someone starts to leverage their network and spend their time and energy into it. I think it's important to go through this exercise. Just vet the ideas that are, and there might be multiple. It's not necessary that the person only comes up with one idea. There could be multiple ideas, and you could use this tool to vet those ideas. You could also use this tool, the storyboard tool, to think about the future. So, for instance, the one I'll walk you through, this is again Sam's journey, a college sophomore who is figuring out what she wants to do in life. And how she goes into idea one, but then she also is thinking about how to take that idea to maybe idea two. You could call it a pivot, you could call it a scale. It could be any situation, but you can flesh out those ideas and vet them as you are beginning to think about the activation pieces of how do I put this into action. So what you see in front of you on the screen is that storyboard tool, and there are certain questions very much like a business model canvas, except that this is much more informal and it is much more earlier stage versus people can do that too. People definitely can use the tools that are available and existing, but this is much more a conversation that you have with yourself. So some of the pieces might be the same, but there are others that might not be part of some of the other tools that are available. So you get started with questions like, what is your purpose? What are you trying to do here? So you specify the opportunity. Sam, for instance, says, I want to offer healthy and global flavors to the students who live in residential halls or students who come to the dining hall to have lunch or breakfast on campus. So once you identify that is your opportunity, then you go into the questions of, okay, what am I trying to do here? What is my purpose? What am I building? What is the product or service that I actually want to offer? So it forces the individual to really think through, fine, I have this idea, but how do I execute it? What exactly is my product or service that I offer? And then, does the customer need it? Like, who are the customers, and how am I helping the customers? What is the benefit? What is the value add of what I am trying to offer to the customer, in the whole process? Who are my customers? And then next is, what differentiates my product or service from others that exist in the market? Am I just replicating something that is already there, or is this completely new? Which means that the customer segments are going to be pretty different. It also means that the way you activate that idea, which we will talk about next time, is going to be very different. So, what is the value add for what I am putting out in the market as my product and service? So you can see Sam thinks that by offering these healthy options, the students are going to see more variety, uh, and the entrees that are created for the students by the students result in better access to the dining hall, as well as fosters loyalty, which the dining halls want more and more students to continue to eat at these places. Next is, what are the resources that I will need? So whether it's financial resources, whether it's network, whether it's time and energy, what is it, that skill sets, knowledge that I bring to the table to really make this happen? And this helps the person then start to see gaps of, who else do I need to leverage? Who do I reach out to for advice, support, or resources? How much time is it going to take me to do this? And do I have the experience? Do I have the background? Do I have the knowledge? And if not, what do I do about it? And then there is this concept of affordable loss, which is, how much am I willing to lose on this? I mean, we all understand that building something, whether it is a startup, whether it is a new product or service, there is a high likelihood of failure. So, what is the ability of the individual to assume that risk? How much is going to be enough? And in this case, this is a sophomore who doesn't really have any source of income. So she says very clearly, I don't have any money to invest, but what I will do is, I'm going to spend my energy and time making this work. And one semester is the time period that she is willing to give. She's willing to risk or lose that much time to make that idea a reality. And a little bit of money, and the book discusses what exactly that cost is for her. And what she says, the worst case scenario is that it doesn't take off, and I've given my time for that one semester, maybe spent a few $100s, and I learned an important lesson of how to make something work. So that's the concept of affordable loss. And uh, the last one is success. It's very important to define uh, success in hard economic terms, in hard financial terms, in hard customer acquisition terms, whatever the metrics are, but they have to be objective metrics that will allow the person to understand whether this is successful or not. And if you don't do that exercise up front, and you start working on the product and service and then roll it out, you might be in for surprises. So this is just a way. And this is, remember, this exercise is all pre the startup phase. This is all the activities that have to happen before the individual actually sinks in any time, any energy, or any resources in it. Now, you can flesh this storyboard tool and keep adding columns to it. So, idea two, for instance, as you see, is because Sam is a pre med student, she is thinking about, maybe I'll finish my medical degree and I want to stay in the field where I combine my love for medicine with my love for cooking and start a wellness center. And so, this is her now thinking about the future, and that future is years away. She still has 3 years of college, and if she gets into med school, there's at least 8 years of that. But the brain is primed for that, the the thinking ahead of where she could take this idea. She also could for instance, pursue a degree in culinary medicine if she wanted to take that idea to further. It is important for medical students to learn and provide nutritional advice to the patients. So you can see she's connecting these dots for much further into the future. And you can use this exercise for that, or you could flesh out two ideas at the same time, go through the entire opportunity assessment, and then maybe get to a point where you feel, idea one really isn't working that well or isn't going to work that well. I am going to maybe first go with idea two because maybe the resources required are less, maybe the time required is less, or maybe the likelihood of success with the customer segment that is available, easily available, is much better. So lay out your thinking process. This storyboard tool is all about laying out that thinking process before you activate on the idea. This helps you assess the practicality of the idea.
So it can also, those are all such great points. It can also be done in teams. I was involved in, 20 different teams of 4 and 5 students a couple weekends ago, and they really didn't need much prompting or coaching. I mean, we gave them not even that much detail, and they just ran with it. And it was fun to watch obviously the talent pop up, on the teams, but they were all using the storyboard as they were building businesses to help a specific city. And then they pitched, and they used this as kind of the framework for their pitch. Mm-hmm. So I've seen it work again, all the way down to the age of 14, and on teams. So it's self and team. The structure works in both situations.
That's a very good point. Now, one more thing that I would like to point out here is that you can see from this, and I'm sure all of you have had this experience too, sometimes there is not a predetermined goal in the mind of the individual who is beginning this whole process of starting and building something. You don't have to have a specific predetermined goal. You need to allow that individual to have the goal emerge through the iterative process. So thinking through every piece of what needs to happen will allow that individual to get to the point where he or she feels, that's what I want to do. That makes sense to me. Now I can see it. So that's what you are trying to do by using these two tools that we've talked about today. And it is also possible that the person did have a goal in mind, and that changes through this process.
Yeah.
And that's that beauty of helping someone walk through through this iterative process and through different ways of looking at the problem from all different angles.
And in a coaching and mentoring capacity, and obviously our Gallup coaches know this, but now maybe I'm speaking to non-Gallup coaches, but making those goals realistic. Mm-hmm. I've so often, these kids are, I'm going to build a $5 million company in 2 years. Well, when your reality is too far away from your expectation, that's also clinical depression. So setting goals that enable you to achieve them, get to first base, then get to second base. You can't be swinging, for a grand slam walk off every time you're up to bat, I think is really important to goal setting.
That is absolutely true.
Set goals you can.
It's good point, Todd. I mean, start one podcast before you do 5. That's been my
get to first base.
My experience. Jeff asked a great question from the chat room. He says, "Are the people using these forums to take this idea and act on them on their own to find the answers, or are they to take this to the coach and to their board of directors first?"
That's a great question.
Great question. It is possible to do it on your own. I think the journey would be easier with an advisor. So, if someone has a coach, an advisor, and takes it to the board, forms the board first, and then takes it, I think it'll just be an easier journey.
And it could be both. I think there are some circumstances where I might have an idea and I want to flush it out, and this is a good tool to just kind of work me through the various, I'm pretty undisciplined in my thinking sometimes. And so this would help me individually walk through. I love the idea of a second idea too. So Oftentimes when I'm ideating, I get other ideas. They just pop out there too, and it gives me a chance to jot those down. And then I would take this back, maybe clean it up, take it back to a board of directors, or take it back to a group of friends.
An executive committee. If you
Right
think
on.
you see something in, I'm at Eastman Kodak and I think we need to do something differently, this structure could have maybe saved that place. So everything, be it an angel investor, be it a teacher, be it a parent, or be it an executive committee in an existing company, I could see application in each one of those.
Right.
And there's even some additional things I think, you can draw outside the lines if you get into this and figure, hey, wait a minute, I need to add another piece that's maybe unique to my industry or something along those lines. Fill that piece in, right? It just gives you the framework. Bobby in the chat room says, what if you're already working with someone who didn't do something like the storyboard tool and things are not going as they'd hoped? Is there still value in breaking this out and working it through if they're maybe midway through an idea already?
I think so. I absolutely think so. I think even if someone is midway through the idea, uh, going through that whole process really will clear up things. I think it'll spark those either additional ideas or ways to achieve their goals. Identification of what success looks like really, really helps clarify things, especially when you state the success in economic terms, in financial and business related terms. That makes it really, really clear. So I think this exercise is valuable when the person is in the process also.
Yeah, it could flesh out blind spots that by definition you can't see.
Right.
So it could force conversations with yourself or with somebody else that heretofore didn't happen because it wasn't intentional.
Right. It also helps the person to get clarity. So it is possible the person who is already in the middle of working something, you get a tunnel vision because you are in the middle of doing something. And what this does is it pulls the person back, one step back. And if there is a coach involved, or even if someone is doing it on their own, he or she can start to see some deficiencies in their thinking or planning process, or maybe routes that would be easier to take, or routes that are better to take for the long term, whatever the case may be. But I think it just gives that it gives someone a room to think through things. That's what basically the storyboard tool is. Think through every aspect of it.
A high innovation space right now is in the blockchain, and I'm watching a lot of blockchain companies who got started 2 or 3 years ago and knew very little about where this thing was going to end or even happen. And they're 3 years or 2 years into it, and everybody's beginning to pivot as they've learned a bunch of new things, right? What the thing I like about that example is they did not wait for necessarily an opportunity to play itself out completely for profitability. They saw some potential, they began to get started. And the companies that got started are 2 or 3 years ahead of those now that didn't, are trying to come in late. And there's sometimes advantages to coming in late, but we're watching these companies pivot and pivot hard with new information. As you were talking about this, I was thinking through, some advice I might give them if they were writing this storyboard out now, thinking through these things. But it gives them an opportunity to go back. Jeff in the chat room says this is a great step for people who have their ideas on paper to look at later. I think that's a great example, either paper or in a spreadsheet somewhere. Best thinking in an area that isn't your strong area can still end in a bad idea being moved forward, even if it's written down. Yeah, bad ideas written down are still bad ideas. Yeah, the team talent needs to be in the eyes reviewing that idea for best opportunity and successful outcomes. And it's not always the best idea that wins either. Sometimes it's the best marketing that wins. And so, you can have these great ideas, and if they're not marketed correctly, they'll go.
Yeah. How about business models? Here's 3 ideas: selling movies, renting movies, picking up trash, or selling used cars on the internet. They're humble ideas at best. I'd argue they're bad ideas. Each one was a Fortune 500 company because the guy behind him was Wayne Huizinga, who was a really good scaler. We call him a conductor. That guy knew how to put together business plans, and he took bad ideas and turned them into multi-billion-dollar empires. So your point's great. Takes different kinds of talent.
No, it does. And a bad idea today may not be a bad idea 2 years from now. It just may not be flushed out all the way. And for those, there are, I think, those entrepreneurs who stick to it and it still fails. And there are those who almost give up and it succeeds. Like, you don't know till you do it. You have to go through the process of making it work and leading it to the end. I guarantee you, if you quit, it automatically fails, right?
I can guarantee that, right?
100% of the time.
It's been fun coaching. This might not make the editorial cut, but when you're coaching on high determination, these tools really help because they won't give up. And I like the affordable loss, because you've got to really force that conversation. I've done a lot of coaching to high determined people, and by definition, and God love them, but they will not give up. You have to have a structured conversation to help them see that this is going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Sangeeta, anything else you'd add when we think about these two tools? I threw a final, we've got a few minutes left. I threw a final questions out into the chat room, but anything else you'd add as we think about wrapping it up?
I think, just to reiterate, I think, again, starting with your talents, identifying the activities that really engage someone. Where do you learn the fastest? Where do you perform with excellence? And I would recommend focusing on one or two areas, not too many, because then sometimes you have abundance of ideas, and then it gets really, really hard to select which one. So maybe one or two areas through that exercise of the opportunity journal, and then connect the dots. I think that connection of the dots will happen as you're going through that opportunity journal exercise. Recognize the patterns is essentially what I'm trying to say. And then look to your networks to get some advice on what you're thinking. Maybe jot down everything on a storyboard tool to see what you really need, what all it will take to start, and get multiple paths going. I think that's another one where it is important to, in the assessment stage at least, try to figure out the multiple paths to get to your goal. It's important to push for that, especially as an advisor, as a coach. It's important to push for, okay, you want to go down this route, but how about if we take another one? Is there another one? How long that would take? What would that take in terms of resources and time? Who are your customers at the end of that route versus the first one you were thinking about? So just talk through those stages of getting ready to start something.
Oh, very good. Todd, anything else?
Well, and to grow something, I can't help but look at these activities and think about some of our iconic, large company failings, the Radio Shacks, who didn't understand their customer needs were changing, right? Some of the just iconic. I couldn't help but listening to Dr. Badal about, Facebook on Capitol Hill, and how the regulatory environment and the changes are occurring, and how they're, probably storyboarding their future as a $100 billion business. So I just want to reiterate the application throughout the ecosystem, not just, the sophomore in college. It's just so applicable. I think about Gallup, and I think about the new different products and services we have in pipeline, and if I had to pick, even though they're all critically important, I just love that customer piece. Everybody that knows me knows I'm a big fan of customers that actually pay, not just users, but customers that produce revenue. I think that's a really important piece of the equation. So I would like to thank again my good friend Dr. Badal, and you, Mr. Jim Collison, for bringing this to our community. The coaches are the reason we exist, and the great work they're doing out there. We do have a couple coaching classes coming up in July for those that want to either go back through with the new materials and or any new coaches. The courses are coming, and of course, I'd be remiss not to mention the Born to Build book is available everywhere. Releases the second week in May, but it's available in pre-order. Pre-orders have been going really well. So we're excited about changing the national dialogue from what do you do or what's your major to what are you building? Boom.
And
Todd,
also
go ahead.
Just to reiterate Todd's point, it has much more detail. It has real example of an entrepreneur, example of this student who is still figuring out what to do with her life and her future. So much more in that book than what we've discussed here.
Oh, yeah.
I will remind individuals we've done all the talent themes as well on video, and we have 45 minutes of those. The series kicked off by Rod Carr, who's taught many of those who have gone through the BP10 training. Micah and I working through each one of those 10 talents, and they're available for you on our Gallup Strength Center YouTube page. So if you go to youtube.com/Gallup Strengths, that will get you there. We also have a complete topic list of them available on our coaches blog. If you just go to coaching.gallup.com. Todd, I wasn't listening. Did you mention there's also a 15% discount for those who come during the summit? Did you mention that?
Most of the coaches try to pay more. I've never heard about a discount.
There is. If they come, if it's still before July 16th, 17th, or 18th of 2018, you might be listening to this in the future. If it is before that, those are available now. I can't guarantee you what's happening in 2019, but we probably will have a summit. So head out to cliftonstrengthsummit.com and see what opportunities are available for you out there. Anything else before we wrap this?
Well, just since our last video, we've been able to put more user personas on the website. So under the testimonial key, we've got, I think, 9 different folks talking about how they're using BP10. They're kind of fun and engaging. So if you haven't had a chance to just spend a few minutes, they're only a couple minutes each. I think it's a valuable activity. Again, back to that new website and under the testimonial key.
Yep. And we're moving those 10 talent themes that we went through. We're moving those to the new site as well. Those are available. Todd, what if folks want to audit that course? How do they do that?
They can contact me,
okay,
and I'll put them in touch with the right folks. I think we do a pretty hefty discount for those that are taking it for a second time.
Yeah, we do indeed. So make sure you get a hold of Todd_Johnson@Gallup.com. We'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available, both at the Gallup Strength Center and new BP10 site. Head out to GallupStrengthCenter.com or Gallup.com/ that's a / builder. And we have a lot of materials out there for you as well. Don't forget, you need to have taken the assessment and log in to be able to get access to these resources. They're available for you out there when you do that as well. If you have any questions around anything, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget, you can catch the recorded audio and video. I talked about all these are available for you in both audio and video forms. You can download them or view them. The links to get that done is on our coaches blog. Go to coaching.gallup.com. If you are interested in any of the training or becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can see a list of all of our courses that lead to that. They're on our courses page, and this is updated all the time, courses.gallup.com. Don't forget to join our Facebook group. If you go to facebook.com/BP10, I think it's maybe group/BP10, or just search BP10 on Facebook. Love to have you out there in the conversation as well. I want to thank you for joining us for part 2, 3, and 4 coming up in the next 2 weeks. Get signed up, gallup.eventbrite.com. Thanks for joining us, and that we'll say goodbye, everybody.